Once held by the PS Vita, the Nintendo Switch has taken the title of the modern day indie machine, meaning there are a whole host of amazing titles to choose from. Whether you're just starting out on your indie journey or are looking for some inspiration, here are 19 of the best indie games I've played on the Nintendo Switch. Stardew Valley is a beautiful pixel art homage to the finest iterations of the Harvest Moon series, in which you take control of an old farm left to you by your late grandfather. At its core, you grow crops, tend to animals and forge relationships with the townsfolk around you in order to build your capital and further grow your farm. However, there's way more to it than that. Seasons dictate which crops you can grow, the livelihood around the farm is bustling, there's a mine and a desert, and a deep RPG progression system that makes for an incredibly addictive game. Couple that with the fact that each day of the 28-day seasons can be played in around 20 minutes, and you have a game that you're guaranteed to lose dozens, if not hundreds of hours to, just like me. Snipperclips is the OG of the Switch indie roster. Released as a launch title for the console in 2017, Snipperclips garnered tons of attention, partly due to the fact that being a launch title there was limited competition, but mainly due to its incredibly fun and charming co-op gameplay that caused hours of belly laughs accompanied by moments of sheer frustration. The idea is simple: cut chunks out of your partner to complete various objectives such as moving items from one place to another or popping a basketball for a hoop. However, while the premise may be simple, the execution is far from it, as you soon realise that you have to be extremely precise with your snipping, and more so have to resist the urge of just cutting chunks out of your partner until they are no more. Any game deserves credit when it can bring you to tears and cause stomach pains from sheer laughter, and boy does Overcooked succeed at that. Designed for co-op play, Overcooked is another game which, on paper at least, seems easy. Work in a kitchen and prepare an assortment of dishes as they're requested. As I said, simple on paper, but Overcooked is as chaotic as any game I've ever played. Wrestling with time, you're forced to chop, boil, fry and plate the ingredients at your disposal to make these delicious meals, all while ensuring that your supply of plates are kept clean and the kitchen around you descends into carnage. This game is the ultimate relationship tester, as you're sure to find yourself getting angry that your partner didn't bring you the tomatoes fast enough or didn't wash up a plate when you needed it, but that's what makes Overcooked hilarious. The frantic nature of lobbing a lettuce across the kitchen, or sheer nonsense you're bound to be spouting at each other. Donut County is a Katamari-esque puzzler with a wicked sense of humour. Unlike Katamari games, however, the goal isn't to have things to stick to you to increase your size, but to suck them into the hole that you're controlling, and once you've swallowed everything, the level is complete. Donut County is a bite-sized treat taking only a couple of hours to beat, and the simple gameplay loop coupled with the bizarre story of a donut shop owning raccoon is more than enough to make the game worth a purchase. One of the most clever and peculiar games on the Switch, Bubba Is You has you moving words around to make sentences and complete puzzles. One level, for example, has you faced with a stream of lava, a selection of phrases, and the objective on the other side of said stream. If you touch the lava you die, however, move the words around to state that lava is Bubba, and suddenly the once fatal lava turns into a horde of Bubba whom you play, and you can hop across to the flag. It's definitely a game for the thinkers due to its incredibly unique and puzzling nature, which isn't for everybody, but those who enjoy a good head scratcher will adore this, as there's nothing else quite like it. Slay the Spire is a highly addictive roguelike card game that nails the one more run formula. In the Switch version, you pick one of 3 starting characters, each playing completely differently to the last, and progress floor by floor through levels of the Spire. Each level has a randomly generated set of paths for you to choose from, mixed with enemies, healing areas, a merchant and more, and as you progress and defeat foes, you add more cards to your deck. As with all roguelikes though, if you die, it's back to the beginning. However, undoubtedly as you progress, you'll unlock new cards and your knowledge of strong card combinations or enemy attacks grows, arming you for that next run. Dead Cells is another highly addictive roguelike, however this time not based on collecting cards to best your enemies, but an array of weapons to slice, dice and maim them. Incredibly frantic, Dead Cells excels at fast-paced, close combat with interspersed Metroidvania elements. Each run is different and as brutal as the last, however the more you play the further you get, as you upgrade your skills and abilities, learn the intricacies of the enemies and get used to the huge assortment of weapons at your disposal, before ultimately meeting your untimely end and starting again. It's this fast and frantic action that led Dead Cells to sweep up an assortment of awards and nominations in 2018, including the prestigious Best Action Game at that year's Game Awards. Hollow Knight falls into the arguably oversaturated genre of indie Metroidvanias on the Nintendo Switch, however manages to carve out its own niche as one of the best looking and hardest games in the category. Playing as a little bug knight in the stunning yet understated fictional underground kingdom of Hallownest, you explore various areas, defeating your enemies and looking for skills that will allow you to progress to the next area. The somber tone, high difficulty levels and enemies that require you to almost rhythmically dodge and time your attacks often draw comparisons to the Dark Souls franchise, and in my eyes it warrants it. Hollow Knight is a gem that deserves all the praise it gets, and with its sequel Silksong due out in the future, is the definition of an essential title. When you ask people to name the best indie game on the Switch, Celeste is probably the one that pops up most often, and for good reason. A beautiful platformer that's equal parts clever and brutal, with a story that deals with many topics that hit very close to home. Climbing Celeste Mountain, you need to make perfectly timed jumps, utilising whatever environmental tools you may have at your disposal, but if you're even a fraction of a second out, you'll die and restart the section. As frustrating as it sounds, it makes Celeste all the more rewarding when you finally make that jump you've been trying for the last 10 minutes. It's the combination of these elements that made Celeste an instant hit and ensured it scooped up awards from multiple huge sources, including the DICE Awards, the Game Awards, and IGN's End of Year Awards. Like Celeste, SteamWorld Dig 2 is considered to be in the upper echelons of indie titles. Another Metroidvania game that leans heavily into the run-based formula, SteamWorld Dig 2 has you playing as Dorothy, a steam-powered robot digging into a mine looking for Rusty, the protagonist from the original SteamWorld Dig. Beginning each run dropping into the mine, your objective, all while fighting enemies and being limited by light levels and health, is to collect ore and resources which you take to the surface in exchange for upgrades to increase your efficiency and thus making it further down on your next run. As with all good Metroidvanias, the hook is there, tempting you to try and push further just one more time. However, SteamWorld Dig 2's charming graphics, engrossing world and precise gameplay make it feel better at this than most. Darkest Dungeon is definitely, as its name suggests, the darkest game on this list, with some awful afflictions and a host of contractable diseases including spasm of the entrails and the Black Plague. It probably deserves that title. As unique as it is dark, the game is a brutally hard, side-scrolling, dungeon-crawling RPG in which you take on missions with your party and try and make it back in one piece. The game is incredibly deep, with 15 varied classes, each with a whole host of skills and abilities, multiple locations to explore, and a buffet of disgusting enemies and bosses. While the game has some classic RPG tropes, Darkest Dungeon offers some twists on the formula that make it feel distinct. In battle, party placement is crucial, as certain classes and attacks do more damage based on where they sit within the group, but arguably more important than that is how you manage their stress levels, something that can often make or break missions. If a party member becomes too stressed, their behaviour becomes erratic, which can ultimately lead to a heart attack, and as with all deaths in this game, this is permanent. Overall, Darkest Dungeon is incredibly brutal, however once you crack the formula it can actually feel like one of the most rewarding games on this list, and is very much deserving of the sequel that developer Red Hook Studios announced last year. Wargroove is a fantastic turn-based strategy game in the vein of Advance Wars. The beloved franchise seems all but forgotten about by Nintendo, so Chucklefish, publishers of Stardew Valley, stepped up and developed the familiar feeling yet different enough alternative to fill that hole. Commanding an assortment of units from your standard military ensemble to a selection of more fantasy-based creatures, you must complete objectives and dominate maps to progress through a varied campaign. Accompanying the 20-hour campaign are a wide range of other game modes, including an arcade mode, a puzzle mode, and an incredibly rich content creator, one with so much detail that it was used to create Wargroove itself. Propped up even further by a strong multiplayer showing, Wargroove definitely scratches that strategy itch and is a must-play for Advance Wars fans and turn-based strategy fans alike. Like Wargroove, Into the Breach is another turn-based strategy game. However, when comparing the two side by side, Into the Breach is harder, darker and played on smaller scale maps. The follow-up to PC hit FTL, Into the Breach is set in a world in which an army of Vek, giant bug-like creatures, have taken over, and it's your job to command a group of mechs to take Earth back by completing various objectives during missions. These range from protecting a particular building to killing a certain amount of enemies. Another game with roguelike elements, Into the Breach dials the strategy part of turn-based strategy to the maximum, often forcing you to sacrifice units for the greater good, and in doing so losing them permanently, which definitely helps add to the difficulty level as you lose precious units you'd previously spent time levelling up. One of the more unique games on the list, Crypt of the Necrodancer, is a tricky, roguelike rhythm game in which you traverse down various levels of a dungeon, fighting enemies and collecting weapons, armour and spells to reach the next floor. What makes Crypt of the Necrodancer stand out from a sea of roguelike Switch titles, however, is the rhythm aspect of the game. You can only move to the beat of the music, and enemies are the same. This means plenty of learning the various creatures' movement patterns to avoid taking damage, all while hopping along to the beat trying to hit them yourself. The music is catchy, gameplay creative, and it's loop addictive, making it for me one of the most essential of essential titles on the platform. Then there's Cadence of Hyrule, same premise and developer as Crypt of the Necrodancer, however with a Zelda theme. Instead of a dungeon, you explore a randomly generated map of Hyrule, collecting instruments to help defeat Ganon. The enemies change from slightly generic fantasy creatures to recognisable foes from past Zelda games, and the ditties you hop along to are all too familiar tunes from the franchise. Both games are definitely worth picking up, and I'd suggest starting with Crypt of the Necrodancer in order to fully appreciate Cadence of Hyrule. Typically, you wouldn't expect to see a hybrid of a block matching puzzler and a side-scrolling beat-em-up, however Battle Chef Brigade combines the two and does it well. Each of the two genres have a different function within the game. The beat-em-up sections are how you gather the ingredients you use in your cooking. Heading out into the wilderness, you fight birds, beasts and plants, then harvest them for their resources. Then, once you've collected everything, you head to the kitchen and strategically drop your ingredients into the pan during the block matching segments, every ingredient representing a specific combination of colours for you to try and match. While an unconventional combo, Battle Chef Brigade is a really fun game, and when coupled with its interesting story is worthy of any Switch library. Another game with an incredibly clever concept, Moonlighter has you dungeon crawling during the night and then heading back home and selling your wares during the day. Selecting from one of 4 dungeons during your travels, you fight your way through various rooms collecting loot from enemies or chests until your backpack is full, or you're defeated. Once your run is over, you head back to town and sell your goods in your shop. However, it's not quite as simple as it seems. You have no guidance as to what any item is worth, so you're left blindly placing items on sale, pricing them how you see fit, then judging whether you valued them correctly based on your customers' reactions. A satisfying loop that can be extra rewarding when you nail the price of something or disheartening when you don't. Moonlighter is definitely one of the more creative indie titles on the list. Originally released and exclusive for the Xbox One, Studio MDHR's Cuphead is a brutally hard run and gun game where you go from stage to stage fighting a huge array of wildly different bosses, starting with vegetables and culminating with the devil. What sets Cuphead apart from its competitors and makes it so charming is its art style, animation and music. Looking and sounding exactly like a cartoon from the 1930s, Cuphead nails the aesthetic and makes it its own, and if for nothing else, is absolutely worth a playthrough just to appreciate that. Undertale is now something of a cult classic, a fantastically weird RPG almost solely created by a name now synonymous with the gaming industry, Toby Fox. A love letter to many RPGs that came before it, including Earthbound, Undertale sees you embark on a journey in the underground, a place teeming with banished monsters. Quickly encountering Sans, the now instantly recognisable skeleton, you must make your way back to the human realm, encountering many enemies along the way. How you choose to deal with these enemies is up to you. In a highly distinctive battle system, you control a heart and try to dodge the enemy's attacks, choosing yourself whether to spare the opponent or kill them, with either of the options impacting your ending of the game. Undertale deservedly earned its high regard amongst players thanks to its interesting characters, great music, unusual graphical stylings, and for being just downright different. And if you've not played it yet, the Switch is the perfect place to start. And there you have it, 19 of the best indie games you can play right now on the Nintendo Switch. Is there anything I missed or that you disagree with? Let me know in the comments below. And whilst you're here, make sure to follow all my social channels listed on screen now. Thanks for watching.